in general, in the United States, do people remove their shoes when they go into houses or not? No. Why don't they?
Not part of the culture.
Yeah, it's not part of the culture. It's actually a really stupid thing to do, to walk into your house with your shoes on. It's very silly. I mean, why would you walk outside in mud and dirt and all sorts of other things? And even if you don't consider, dog poop or anything like that to be particularly disgusting, which most people do just because it smells awful, but it also has religious significance for some people. Even if you don't consider these things to be particularly dirty and unhealthy, you're still increasing the costs of cleaning your carpets or even your floors, actually. So it doesn't, even if you don't have a carpet, you're still getting your floor dirty. And you have to wipe the floor or something, or somebody does it. So it's unnecessary. I find it interesting. And yet people not only wear their shoes inside, but may find it unusual and maybe a little bit off-putting to go into a house or a place where they have to remove their shoes. Another question. How many of you have seen or heard of people making comments about women who wear hijab, about the idea of hijab? What kind of things do you hear people say about that? What do you hear people say about it?
They ask if the women are oppressed, and that's why.
Okay. So the assumption is that wearing a hijab is some kind of oppression. I mean, but this is very interesting. Think about it. Why is covering your head any more oppressive than covering any other part of your body? I mean, is there some kind of line or something between your neck and your head? If you cross this line, somehow human beings should automatically feel like they're being suffocated, as if someone's actually cutting off their oxygen. I mean, it seems like kind of an arbitrary line to draw. So in America, women wear shirts. They don't walk around topless, correct? When you think about why you act the way you do, why you dress the way you do, why you style your hair the way you do, most of it is because of custom. And this is something that I think a lot of times people in the United States, and I'd say in the West in general, and we could talk about other civilizations as well, but I'll focus on this one, they don't appreciate. Because their behavior is seen as, they see their behavior as rational, as modern, and modern is partially what's rational and reasonable and scientific. It's assumed that most of what people do is good, is reasonable, is what should be done, not just what has been done culturally. And we can go into many examples of this in American society or in British society. But what's very interesting is how infrequently people are willing to simply say, this is our custom, this is the way we do things, there's no reason for it, it's not any better or worse than anything else, it's simply the way we do things. And therefore, the way other people do things is exactly as valuable and has the exact same weight for them as our way of doing things has for us. People very rarely are willing to make that conclusion because, again, the assumption is that the way we do things is modern and good and reasonable, hence other ways of doing things is not modern or reasonable or good. This brings up, and when we talk about complicated issues, we often end up talking about the Greeks or using Greek words, and I think in this situation it's appropriate. The division that the ancient Greeks made between nomos, N-O-M-O-S, nomos, and phusos or physos, depending on how you read it, P-H-Y-S-I-S, physis. You may know where this word, we have words that come from this, words like physics. Right? So nomos is law, nomos is custom. This is what people decide for themselves. These are customs and conventions, things that human beings create as values and rules amongst themselves. Physos is reality, natural reality. And when we talk about religion, or when we talk about sort of right and wrong in the absolute sense, what we're saying is that there is a notion of right and a notion of wrong. Rules that exist separate from human beings. That even if human beings got together and decided, let's say, that murder is right, murder would still be wrong. So physos is the idea that there is something out there separate from us that's real, that exists apart from us, and that will always be the case. Absolute right and wrong. Like the rules of nature. Okay? Nomos says, these are the things that we, as a group of people, whether we're 10 people or 20 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, a city or a whole country, these are the things that we have gotten together and agreed upon, either through just consensus or through active agreement. These are our rules. Now, what we see very often in human history is that people assume that their nomos is actually physos. They think that their custom is actually some absolute rule. So why are we even speaking about this? We've spoken about custom, we've spoken about how we interpret scripture. Because Muslims, since they encountered the force of modernity, since they encountered countries that appeared suddenly from the seas, from across the seas, with military power, with political organization, with social organization, with a command of science and knowledge that simply overwhelmed completely anybody else. Since Muslims came across this civilization, they haven't known what to do about their religion because they believed that they had the truth. They believed the truth was encapsulated in the Quran and the Sunnah, in the revelation of the Prophet. But now they find other people who don't believe in that. In fact, they make fun of that religion, and yet they're the most powerful ones. They're the ones who control knowledge. They're the ones who control almost the forces of nature. Their social organization, their values seem so attractive, so true. You want to dress like them. You want to act like them. You want to have your facial hair like them. You want to have your hair like them. You want to be like them because they're powerful, because they're advanced. And now you look at your holy book, you look at the things attributed to your prophet, and you sometimes think that they look silly. You sometimes think that they sound ridiculous, or that they teach things that are backwards, that don't go along with the nomos, the custom of this new world, a custom which must be true because it's the custom of those people who control everything now. And that's the big crisis, right? So when you hear certain hadiths or you read certain verses of the Quran, you think that you can't accept this anymore because it goes against the values of those societies. We have to remember two things. One, where do you get truth from? This is something I really think Muslims should ask themselves. Where do you get truth from? What is true for you, ultimately? Really, what is the truth for you? Is the truth God? Is the truth the message that God sent to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? Or is the truth the ways of the society in which you live? Is nomos really, like Pindar says, is custom really the king of all? Is custom really your king? This is something Muslims, I ask myself this, I think we should all ask ourselves this question. What ultimately is the source of truth for you? What ultimately is the source of morals for you? Someone can come and tell you that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ married a 9-year-old girl, and you can think that this is the worst thing you've ever heard. The fact of the matter is that feeling that you have doesn't mean that what the Prophet Muhammad did was wrong. It doesn't mean anything, because other people in the world don't have that feeling at all. Other people in this society don't have that feeling. So we have to be very careful not to interpret this, even the deepest, most guttural revulsion, as somehow being the truest reaction or the truest evaluation of something's moral character or moral nature. This is very important. The Quran is historically reliable, even if you're not Muslim. I think this is the conclusion you'd come to. If you want to talk about hadiths, we can sit and discuss till we're blue in the face whether or not hadiths are authentic or not. We can sit and have a long discussion about this. But I would tell you that our criterion, our measure for seeing if they are reliable or not, is not our reaction as modern Americans. It's not the feelings we have as people living in 21st century Las Vegas and whether we think something is right or wrong, because that has no moral worth. That does not have any weight for other societies, doesn't have any weight for other times and other places in history. And it certainly has no claim to some absolute truth. And has no power, has no right to overrule or to judge something that's attributed to the prophet of God. It's a very important principle.